Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Friday. Um, we'll start off here. There's not too many people here, but hopefully more people will show up shortly. So Reza's here. Good morning, Reza. Sean is here. Good morning, Sean. Whoops. Good morning, Sean. There we go. Zartaj is here. Good morning, Zartaj. Basil's here. Good morning, Basil. Um, Rafay is here. Good morning to you. And Hamad is here. Good morning. And Simran is here. Good morning, Simran. So, yes. Where were we? Yes. So today we'll be able to. I think we'll be able to wrap up racism. I think we've kind of dealt with it enough. Although we could continue to deal with it for probably a whole course, right? There's different expressions of racism we haven't talked about. There are lots of examples of racism and systemic racism that we haven't dealt with. There's entire groups of people that suffer prejudice and racism that we haven't dealt with, right? And so, again, we could probably spend this whole course just dealing with racism, right? But unfortunately, we do have to move on. So yesterday we were talking a little bit about some of these white supremacists and alt-right people. Again, I showed you this political spectrum. Again, I'm not a fascist, so I'm just going to go over here for the moment. Um, this political spectrum can kind of help us understand people's political views, but it's also something that's used in the news and media, right? We often, especially the U.S. media currently is frequently talking about the left and the right, and so, it's kind of important to understand what that means, right? And what the left is and what the right is. So the guys that we're looking at yesterday are all well out on the right. But of course, if you're just slightly right of the center, you find lots of kind of normal people, right? Lots of traditionally minded, conservative people, people who want, low taxes, people who just want to, keep their life sort of the way it is, right? They don't want to rock the boat too much. But again, as you go further out, you find people with more extreme views, right? And they often have a lot of prejudicial views against minoritized groups, right? Whether they're racial minorities or gender or sexual minorities or religious minorities. And sadly, there's a lot of hate out there, right? There's a lot of anger, and I think we saw that in the film yesterday, right? There's a lot of people who are just really angry about a lot of things, right? We said that the activities of these people have recently increased, right? And part of that has to do, I think, with Donald Trump. Donald Trump makes, again, we said that when people do or say racist things, and especially if they're people in power, it kind of makes space for others to voice their views as well, right? And so people who are powerful or people who are popular, like celebrities, they have a lot of responsibility because they can kind of make space for other things, for other people to speak, right? And if they speak about hatred or about white supremacy or if they say racist or sexist things, it gives other people space to stand up and say those things as well, right? But again, it also works the other way. If you say things that are, in favor of equality and ending racism and ending sexism, then yeah, other people will stand up and speak too, right? And so, unfortunately for Donald Trump, he doesn't seem to really understand anything. So, so he did that, right? And so the video we watched yesterday was focused around the removal of this statue, right, of Robert E. Lee. And again, he's a Confederate general, fought in the U.S. Civil War for the Southern states. Southern states were fighting to preserve slavery, right? So this guy was fighting a war against his own country so that he could continue to, to traffic in human beings, right? And so, again, is this the kind of guy that we want to put up, as the hero of our town kind of thing? And so we saw, actually, maybe I'll just jump ahead here. Yeah, so we saw this was back in 2017. There was a rally in front of the statue protesting the idea of taking it down. Some counter protesters showed up, right, protesting for, for equality and for, an end to racism. Um, Again, we have the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, showing up here on July 8th. Again, that group starts in 1865, but they're still around, right? And they still kind of appear. And again, some of the footage we saw here was from August, where we saw a few protests, but we also saw a protest sort of downtown, which resulted in the death of a young woman, right? And so I kind of asked you these questions yesterday, and I think we heard them kind of express a few different ideas, right? What did these guys believe in? What did these guys believe in? They believed in what? Okay. Yeah, so some of these guys are, have a Christian background, right? And so the religion they're practicing is probably not pure, they're not pure Baptists or whatever, but they do have a Christian background, right? What else do these guys believe? We said that they certainly had they certainly held racist ideas, right? The idea that white people were superior, right? The idea that the U.S. was kind of built by their forefathers and should remain for them, right? So they kind of didn't see a place for people of color in the United States, right? And so they wanted somehow to get these people to go away, right? I guess we could say they definitely believe in violence as well, right? There was a lot of, militarism, right? Which is interesting because, democracy is not really about that, right? Democracy is about, arguing with each other, right? And debating. And then eventually you hold a vote, right? And whatever the vote says, whatever the majority of people vote for, that's what you do, right? And you don't have to like it, but you just do it, right? But these guys seem to have a whole other idea, right? It's almost an authoritarian. It's by force, right? It's not, how are we going to decide this issue? Are we going to debate it, or are we going to fight it out, right? And these guys seem to be interested in fighting it out, right? And they're certainly pretty heavily armed, right? But they were opposing some ideas too, right? They certainly opposed equality. They probably oppose immigration. They were talking about communism, right? One guy said, who maced you? And he's like, oh, communists, right? And it's like, I don't know how the communists are involved in this. And what's that? What does it mean? Well, if you come to history class, so communism is kind of a political and economic system that was kind of devised by a guy named Karl Marx. The first version of it is the Soviet Union, who becomes a communist country, and then other countries start to run their countries on that kind of model. So China starts to use communism, Vietnam, Cuba, who am I missing? North Korea, kind of, a few others. So, but of course, in the 20th century, in the last century, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were kind of locked in a conflict, right? They were engaged in a Cold War for 50 years almost, and so the U.S. has kind of for a long time, the communists were the bad guys, right? And so if you watch films from the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, the bad guys are almost always communists, often Russians, If you watch old James Bond movies, you'll see lots of Russians as the bad guys because, for decades for the U.S. they were the bad guys, right? So we hear lots of stuff like that. We hear things about like Jewish conspiracies and things like that. This kind of idea that somehow Jewish people are in control of the world and are have either taken over or are trying to take over. There's no truth to any of this, right? But it's there's lots of kind of ideas that these guys have that they think are true, right? Maybe take a swing at this one. Why do you think Trump's statement about condemning violence on many sides was a problem? Why do you think people got upset about that comment? I'm not sure I quite grasped what you were trying to say there. It was okay. So what was it about the representation you were saying? Yeah. Sure. So there's definitely two sides to this story, right? There are people who want to remove it and people who want to keep it where it is, right? Yeah. What do you think? Online people, you can chime in here too. Why do you think that? Why is that a difficult statement when there's a protest between white supremacists and people who are protesting for equality and an end to racism, and the white supremacist guys show up with guns and shields and helmets and all kinds of things, and in the process of protesting, this young woman is killed when some guy drives his car into a crowd, right? And Trump gets up there and says, oh, we condemn violence on many sides, on many sides. What's he saying? It's happened for a long time? Okay. And there's no... Good morning. There's no place? Is this a difficult one? What's that? You know? Well, I think a lot of people were having trouble with this because, in saying this and saying, oh, we condemn the violence. Violence is bad on many sides, on many sides. Basically, what he's doing is he's not taking a side himself, right? He's basically saying that, the white supremacists and the people fighting for equality are equal, right? He's almost saying there's no right, there's no wrong here. Yes, these two groups got into conflict, and yes, we don't want people to use violence, but violence is bad, whoever uses it. And it's like, yeah, okay, but here you have a bunch of neo-Nazis, and their protest resulted in the death of a young woman, right? And as the President of the United States, would you say, in your opinion, would you say the right thing to do is stand up and say, the United States does not support neo-Nazis, the United States does not support racism, the United States does not support, protests that become violent, and we're terribly sorry that this poor woman died for no reason, right? Do you think that that's maybe the job of the president, is to condemn racism and to say that, neo-Nazis and white supremacists have no place here? Yeah. No? Yeah? Well, sorry, go ahead.
I think it's not the job of the president.
No? Well, it's true. This is definitely an opinion question, right? But a lot of people thought it was his job, right? A lot of people thought it was his responsibility to stand up there and say, this woman was killed, and in a democracy, you are allowed to protest, right? You are allowed to show up with your signs and say, hell no, we won't go, and all kinds of things like that, right? You're allowed to do that, right? But you're not allowed to assault people, right? You are certainly not allowed to drive your car into a crowd full of people, right? You're not allowed to do that. And again, you are not allowed to discriminate against other people based on their race. You're not allowed to spread hate speech, right? Which is exactly what these guys are involved in, right? And so you're not allowed to do these things, right? In a democracy, in the United States, in Canada, we don't want people spreading hate towards other groups, right? And we'll talk about this actually maybe next week, that's a restriction on your fundamental freedoms. We talked about free speech before with Jordan Peterson, right? So here in Canada, you have the right to free speech, right? You can say whatever you want, but there's a limit, right? And the limit is you cannot use your free speech to spread hatred against other groups, particularly if they are racial groups or based on gender or based on sex or religion. You are not allowed to do that. You can say whatever you want otherwise, right? You can say Justin Trudeau is a damn fool, and you can say it on YouTube. Hi, Justin. You can say it on YouTube, and it's fine, right? There's no problem with that. But again, there are limits in terms of groups that are protected, right? Especially minoritized groups. And so, as I say, this can be a bit of an opinion question if you like, but a lot of people did feel that it was Trump's responsibility to stand up and say, we don't support this, right? We don't support the United States isn't behind your ideas, right? But, of course, he didn't do that because I think in some ways Trump does agree with them, right? I think that, I don't know that Trump is a white supremacist so much, but I think he's definitely a white nationalist, right? So I think he does either consciously or subconsciously believe that white people should be in power, right? That positions of power should be held by white people. Again, he's smart enough not to, express those ideas out loud, but yeah, I think he is. I think he is a bit of a white nationalist, and maybe even a bit of a white supremacist. We talked about this yesterday. Maybe I'll just ask you really quickly again. What do you think? Why do you think these guys are? Why do you think they see the world the way they do? I think Andre brought up the idea that, maybe it was their upbringing, right? That that they had been taught this. They had been taught to think this way, which is potentially true. But I also think that the article told us that most white supremacists that they've studied didn't grow up in white supremacist households. And so they kind of came to these views in some other way, right? They didn't really get them from their parents. They got them from somewhere else, right? Well, why do you think guys are part of these groups? And it is mostly guys, although there were some good points yesterday made about, well, this is a violent rally and these guys are traditionally minded, so maybe the women stay at home, right? And that was...
It could be dangerous.
Yeah.
modern women.
Yeah, and that was a good point. That was a perceptive point yesterday, and probably correct. But I also think what you would find is that most white supremacists actually are men. There's definitely more white supremacist women out there than we saw yesterday. So I think your point is correct. But also most of them are guys. But yeah, why do you think why do you think these guys feel or behave the way that they do?
They got involved from the society from outside. They learn it somewhere in the street.
Definitely, right? They've definitely been exposed to views like this, right? So other groups have been, have been engaging in hate speech, right, towards Jewish people, towards Black Americans, towards Indigenous Americans. These guys have kind of absorbed those views, but let me ask you this. This is the tricky part, okay? Because everyone in society is kind of exposed to those ideas, right? So the ideas that these guys are talking about in the film, like I know they exist, right? I know about the whole kind of the Jewish conspiracy theory, right? I know the stereotypes that are associated with Black people, right? I know that these guys feel they're under attack, right? I know all that, but why don't I feel the same way that they do? Why are they willing to march out there in the sun? I mean, it's like Saturday afternoon, right? Like I like to sleep in, have some coffee, maybe make some pancakes, enjoy the morning. These guys, get all their guns and their bulletproof vests and go and march and yell at people, right? And threaten violence. What's the difference? Why do these guys feel that way, and why do I hear a lot of these ideas and say, you guys are crazy? Like, what are you talking about?
They are missing, like they don't have enough education.
Okay, so education might be the key, right? If education is the key to sort of overcoming racism, maybe a lack of education leads to more of it. That's fair. That's fair. Although, again, some of these guys did sound fairly intelligent, right, in terms of how they spoke, not necessarily what they said, but how they spoke. They sounded reasonably intelligent. But yeah, lack of education is probably part of it. What else do you think?
They could be like unemployment.
They could be what?
Unemployment.
Unemployed?
Yeah.
So they have nothing else to do? Well, yeah, but I don't have anything to do on Saturday either. But I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. But your unemployment comment might be a little more accurate than you think. One of the things, and maybe I'll just sort of tell you this story, not to explain away, not to condone what's happening here, but maybe just to give you a little bit of context. If I asked you to look at your stuff right now, so your computers or your phones, or even if you looked in the tag in your clothing, where's all that? Good morning. Where's all that stuff made? Where's everything made nowadays? Where are things manufactured? Good morning. I know this is made in China. Whoops, I'm still plugged in. I know my phone's made in China. I know my laptop is made in China. Let me see. Oh, that's not good. That's also made in China. Where's your stuff made, people? China? China. Glasses are made in China. What else do I have? I don't know. I can't see the back of my shirt. Everything is made in China or Southeast Asia, right? For the most part. Sometimes you have clothing made in like India or Pakistan, but pretty much everything, right? Everything is made in China, Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Philippines, all those places, right? And what's kind of happened is that, you know, the reason, so everything is made over there, but for the United States, lots of things used to be made in the United States, right? And so in the 1920s, History 12, in the 1920s, the American economy is going like crazy, right? And it's going like crazy because the US has a huge manufacturing sector. So there's lots of people working in factories making stuff, right? Cars, vacuum cleaners, washing machines, and then that kind of continues on, right? As the technology increases, televisions, people are building American-made televisions, all kinds of stuff. And as that continued through the 40s and 50s and 60s, there were lots of young people, mostly men, who could really count on a pretty predictable life trajectory, right? So they'd finish, you know, Andre, if Andre was around in, let's say, 1950 here in Canada or the US, Andre might come out of high school. He might say, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to university, that's for eggheads. Gets a job in a factory, maybe the same factory that his father worked at, manufacturing, I don't know, what do you want to manufacture, Andre? Anything? What? Cars? Okay, so is there a particular type of car you like? Nissan? Okay. Nissan's not around in the 50s, but we'll go with it. So, so Andre's working in the Nissan factory just like his dad did before him. Gets a job when he's 17 after he's finished high school. And Andre's probably going to work there until he's about 55 or so. Maybe 60. 55. Let's say 60. 60 years old, Andre's going to retire. He's made good money. He's had a wife and 3 kids. He's paid for his house. And now he gets to retire with his pension, right? And he did all that with a high school diploma, right? He worked hard for all of those years, but, you know, as long as he worked hard, he could kind of count on that type of lifestyle, right? And lots of men did in lots of manufacturing industries, but as you're probably guessing, what happened through the 1980s and 90s and 2000s and up to today is those manufacturing jobs have kind of gone overseas, right? And so the US doesn't really manufacture all the things that it used to manufacture. And so pretty much everything, I think if we turn this room upside down, we might struggle to find anything made outside of Southeast Asia, right? Because it's expensive to manufacture here, right? People want higher wages and benefits and all kinds of things, right? But the cost of living is lower overseas. You can pay people less. And so those jobs have disappeared. And what's happened is that there was this big group of people kind of in the middle of society, the middle class, who now those jobs are gone, right? All those jobs like Andre and his father worked, they're all gone. And so where are those people going to go, right? Well, what kind of happens is they slid down the economic ladder a little bit. They slid down into kind of service occupations. So a few of them got more education and kind of climbed the ladder, but all of those, you know, comfortable jobs in the middle that you could just come out of high school, get a factory job, and, you know, as long as you worked hard, you were set. Those things are gone, right? Now you need years of university or college, or you kind of wind up in a more basic service level job where the pay is not great. And so, you know, I think not a lot, but some of the anger coming out of these guys is the fact that, you know, they've grown up entitled, right? They have this idea that, you know, things should be easy for them, right? Life should be easy for them. And it isn't, right? And it's certainly less easy than it used to be, right? If these guys were born, you know, 50 years ago, economically speaking, they'd probably be set, right? But now, it's much more difficult, right? You either, have to get some sort of an education or get some sort of a skill, or you're going to wind up kind of, in the bottom layer of society's economics, right? You're not going to be making a lot of money. And meanwhile, these guys kind of see immigrants coming into the country. Immigrants tend to work harder, sometimes because they have to, sometimes because they're happy to be here and they want to make a life here. And also the fact that, both the US and Canada tend to admit immigrants who are already skilled, right? So these guys kind of see that their opportunities, the opportunities that they thought they were going to have are now gone, but now they see immigrants coming in who are either gaining opportunities or are just making their own through sheer hard work, right? And for them, they feel cheated, right? They feel that, something is being denied to them that is owed to them. And it's not true. Nothing is owed to these guys, right? But again, they have this perception because they felt that they were entitled to a certain type of life, and now they're not getting it, right? And whose fault is that, right? Who is to blame? And it's very easy to look at racial minorities and say, oh, well, here's the problem right here, right? All these people are coming in and taking our jobs, right? Which is a common criticism of immigrants, which is not true, right? They're not taking our jobs. They're taking jobs, which is good because that's what they came here for, and people who have jobs contribute to the economy, and that's good too. But again, these guys feel that they're entitled to go to the front of the line, right? And again, for a long period in U.S. history, they did go to the front of the line. But the world is different now, right? And the U.S. hasn't done a fantastic job of managing its workforce in that way. And so again, there's this big section of people who used to be able to get a high school diploma and count on a comfortable life, right? That they would make decent money, they'd be able to buy a house and, have a life and have a pension and all of that stuff. But it's not really the way it is anymore, right? And so, again, everybody has to kind of work harder or get more training, but, some guys, particularly young men for whom gender norms suggest that they need to make money, right? They need to be the provider. They feel cheated, right? And who's to blame for that? Well, sometimes it's women, sometimes it's racial minorities, sometimes it's all of those things. Yes?
I think it's relatable to the story, the cigarette story.
Okay.
Where a man cannot get a cigarette from a lady.
Uh-huh.
Just from a lower class. Like, the immigrant gets the job.
Yeah.
It's not the same if someone from the country got the job.
Yeah.
If I was in that job before, then they replaced me with the one from that country.
Yeah.
I'll not be mad because it's from my country.
Yeah.
But if it was an immigrant, I'll be like, oh no. It's
Yeah.
an immigrant, I'll take him as like lower class than me. And he cannot do that. He's going way higher than me.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's that kind of internalized dominance, right? That idea that, I should get the job first, right? Because I'm Canadian and this guy's not, right? Or I'm American and this guy's not, right? And yeah, that's a very popular feeling, right? I don't know, what do you think? Do you think there's any truth to that? Like, this is kind of my working theory that part of what is fueling these guys is entitlement to, a certain type of life or a certain type of job that is just not there anymore, right? Like that period of history is over in the United States and Canada. It doesn't really exist anymore. Any other ideas? fear of foreign things?
Just where people fear movement, people cannot try to do something. Goal is goal, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, people fear change, right? People fear things that are different. People fear things that are foreign, right? Sometimes people fear people who are foreign, right? Because they don't understand their language or their customs or, you know, things that they might do or how they might dress, right? People sometimes are threatened by that, right?
I know like back in Africa, we used to go like around the country too much. And we used to see like the village people. And like the white guy goes to the village, it would be like a mess. All the kids would be crying because they don't know what they're seeing in front of them.
Oh, so like if I walked into an African village, people would be like,
No, it's either they're amazed or they fear you.
oh.
Because they don't know what you can do. They don't know like, oh.
I can't do anything. I'm hoping for amazement, although I don't think anyone would be amazed by me particularly. But what? I'm sorry, I don't know this, Andre. But what country are you from? Are you from Rwanda? Burundi. Okay. One of my favorite students was from Burundi a number of years ago. What's that?
What was his name?
Her name Elsa. Yeah. She and her sister moved to Toronto, where I hope they're going to school. I don't know. I haven't heard anything, but I hope she's made her way into college or university or something. But yeah, well, and that's true, right? And that's connected to social norms, right? We said that when people violate social norms, sometimes people get uncomfortable, and we try to get them to follow the rules again, right? And of course, as a foreigner, of course you break the rules and violate the norms because you don't know them, right? And I think, have you all had that experience of going to another country and like not understanding like what to do or what to say or how to do something? Have you? I have. I spent almost a year in Russia, so I've done all kinds of silly things because I don't know, because I didn't know how Russia worked, right? Yeah, so it could be fear, right? It could be, you know, a social norm thing, a socialization thing. It could be, you know, these guys feel entitled to a certain life that they can no longer access, and therefore, who is to blame for that, right? Who is to blame when these guys are not, you know, economically successful, financially successful, not successful with women maybe, right? Who's to blame for that, right? Somebody needs to be at fault, right? And sometimes we see that it's, you know, racial or ethnic minorities who get the blame, right? Is there anything else you would like to say on this kind of general topic? This kind of white supremacism thing, racism in general, or just anything? You can say anything, ask anything. Who was the guy driving the car? I don't know his name, but I think they caught him and tried him. Oh, actually, I can show you this. Right there. This is from 5 days ago. So finally, the statue has come down. So there was a lot of legal challenges. The city wanted to take it down, but they found out that the statue falls under state legislation for monuments, and so it was owned by the state of Virginia. So the city could not take it down. So the city tried to cover it with a big black covering. But then there was a legal challenge, and it was, you know, because it was a state statue, the city couldn't cover it, so they had to take it off. And so they've been battling it out in court. There's been some legal changes to, you know, to who controls the statues, but finally, as you can see here, the statue has come down. And again, this was just 5 days ago, so this was last Wednesday. And that was from 2017. So it's been a long fight, right? And and as you can see in the video, it literally has been a fight, right, to overcome, to overcome people's prejudices, right, and to get people to understand, um, what a statue like that means. Maybe one more thing I'll say here is that a lot of people who were against taking the statue down, one of the things they complained about was that, they're trying to erase our history, right? That's what these people said. And does taking down this statue erase history? Hello? Does it erase history? No. Yeah. Robert E. Lee is always going to be a Confederate general. The Civil War will always have happened. The South will always have lost, right? It doesn't change history. But the statue is different, right? The statue is, we make statues of people that we want, that we admire, right? That we respect, that we want to be like, right? And I don't think we want to be like this guy, do we? Probably not, right? I don't want to fight for slavery. That's not what I'm into, right? And I don't think anyone should be into that. But anyway, finally, the statue has come down. The issue is, well, this particular issue is put to bed, but there's more to come. Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll do some project stuff, okay? Project stuff. All right, people, and we are back. So, let's see. Okay, really what we need to do here are two things. So, number one, I need topics from everybody, okay, for your presentation, okay? So, by the end of class today, I would like to know what it is. I said, originally when I gave you the assignment, I said Wednesday, but we kind of let Wednesday come and go without dealing with that. So we need to figure it out today, okay? So what I'm going to do is we have 35 minutes left in class. So I'm going to give you about 20 minutes here to work on your paper topic, and to if you have it or if you know what it is, then start digging in and finding some reliable, legitimate sources, okay? So what I'll do is in Microsoft Teams, I'm going to generate the kind of official assignment for the source part of it, because again, on Monday, I'd like you to hand in 6 sources to me that are properly formatted. And so I will create that. In the meantime, I'll give you guys about 20 minutes to look. If you want to ask me questions during that time, you can. And then again, toward the end of class, I would like to know what those presentation topics are so that we can move forward, okay? So I'll put 20 minutes on the clock, and we'll talk about sources in 20 minutes, okay? Okay. Okay, good people. We've only got about 5 minutes left. Is anyone ready to provide me with their topic right now that hasn't already? I got you and Reza. Elizabeth, I've got you. Jesse, I've got you. Morning. So if you are not ready, then by tonight at midnight, I want to know, okay? Tonight at midnight. Other than that, any other questions for me right now? Going once, going twice. All right, that is it for today then. Have a nice weekend, I guess. Well, not yet. Some of you still have history to deal with. But if I don't see you in history, have a great weekend. Don't forget to hand in your assignment on Monday, and I will see you then, okay? So, au revoir. Thanks, Basil. You have a good weekend too.